Welcome to the Fearless Revolution. Courage is important, but taking fearful action is not a sustainable long-term strategy. If you want to take back control of your life and stop believing the lies that are holding you back, then you're in the right place. Join Sandy Gledhill, your fearless leader coach, as she reveals the secrets to living and leading fearlessly. Now, let's join the Fearless Revolution.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fearless Revolution. I'm so happy that you joined me today because I have my very first guest on my podcast. I wanted in this first season to lay some groundwork for fearlessness. What is it? What is it not? What does fear do to us? How does fear lie to us? And then I wanted to bring you some amazing guests, starting with my guest today. She is truly a quintessential fearless leader. Her story is powerful. She believed the lies of fear for a long time, but when she was able to shut down the voice of fear in her life and rediscover her true identity, her destiny made itself known. Exactly what we talk about all the time. So, please let me introduce to you my friend and the owner of Victory Vision Publishing. If you have a story in you, if you have a half-written manuscript, if you're stuck, but you know you've got a book that needs to be published, you are going to want to get to know my next guest. Please welcome Julie Ballard. Hey, Julie, how are you?
Hey, Sandy, just super happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be your first guest on this show. So exciting.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you. So I gave a little bit of who you are in the introduction, but give us a snapshot of just who you are, where you live. Tell us about your awesome husband. Let the people know who you are.
Sure. Well, my name, like she said, is Julie Ballard. I am living currently in the Panhandle of Texas with my amazing husband, Jason. We moved here from the coast of Mississippi literally 4 days after we got married. So I moved from the beach to the Panhandle of Texas with a brand new marriage and all of the things. So, but I love it here. We're really happy in the Panhandle, and we're just living our best life. I recently left communications and marketing position at a multi-billion-dollar organization and decided to go full-time into the publishing arena. And it has been quite the journey and so exciting. So we've been super blessed to be able to run this business now full-time and just love all my clients and all of the people who are coming to me for solutions.
Yes, and coming to you, they are. Julie and I are friends, so I have, she's also the publisher of my book. Working with her and with Victory Vision Publishing has been a dream because I was one of those people with a burning message and no real way to get that out. I had never written a book before. I didn't understand all the structure of it, but really fear wanted to keep me stuck because I didn't know the publishing process. That was really the thing that hung me up. And what I found with Julie, I called Julie and Victory Vision the third option because there's really only been two options, neither of them great, in the publishing world up to this point. You could either print out your giant manuscript and make dozens and dozens of copies and then wait for those rejections to start rolling in. Or you could try to learn the world of self-publishing. And Julie and Victory Vision has come in with a third option where you can pay her company one flat fee and she holds your hand and walks you through. So I'm not going to go deep on that, but I did want to touch on it, Jules, before we got started, because I want the people to know you are very different. Victory Vision is very differentiated in this market. So before we jump into some questions about your story, what can you tell us about Victory Vision, how it's different? What is your vision for your publishing company?
Oh, goodness, it is different. And like you said, it is a third option. A lot of people dive right into trying to figure out how to self-publish all on their own. And for new indie writers, it's almost impossible to get into traditional publishing houses. And of course, when you're pouring your heart out on paper and submitting everything to the world for, for everyone to see and hear and read, it is a scary process. And so when you're getting rejected time and time and time again, it does nothing but beat down your confidence. And of course, it invokes fear. Right. So the first thing that we do is we hold your hand. That is exactly right. We do exactly that. We take, your manuscript. We do all the formatting. We do the editing. We do the book cover design. We get your ISBN number. We walk you through the publishing process, get it through Kindle, through Apple, through Amazon. We optimize keywords and categories, which actually makes people's books go super high into the bestsellers ranks, as you are well aware. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And then, but it is a hand-holding process. And, a lot of people, don't know how to format. They don't know how to edit. They don't know how to do book covers. They're not graphic designers. They don't know how to go through and watch the 5,000 YouTube videos that there are to tell people how to self-publish, because everybody out there is an expert, right? Yeah. So we just we take it all down. Like we just take it down a whole lot of notches and just make it super simple and easy for our authors. And we do it in a timely fashion to where they're, not a published author. And then now they are, and now they're hitting #1 bestseller ranks in 5 or more categories. Yeah.
And that was our experience working with Victory Vision. Is the Fearless Revolution ebook, even before the paperback copy has come out, the ebook I think went to #1 at the end of the day in 6 different categories, ranging from like spirituality to business. So it was a pretty incredible experience. I think I'm going to start saying, Julie, that Victory Vision does all the stuff that authors don't want to do. Right? We're the creatives, we're putting our words down, and you really do the heavy lifting for the author, which is fantastic. I want to jump in and ask you a few questions. And I think I want to start just by asking you if you could give us the short version of your life story. It's such a broad question, but I want to give our listeners an understanding of where you came from, who you were, who you turned into for a period of time, what your life circumstances were, and then again, reemerging almost out of this cocoon back into the butterfly that you were created to be. And I really wanted to hit who you were as a publisher first. You are successful, you are powerful. You are a friend and a wife. You are just this amazing person. And I think it's going to blow the minds of our listeners a little bit to hear your story. So I just want to hand you the microphone, so to speak, and say, give us a few minutes on what happened in your life.
Okay, so the short version, I was born into a religious family. We went to church every single Sunday. I was a privileged daughter. My dad was the vice president of our local bank and the president of the country club. So I really grew up with the silver spoon in my mouth. I never needed or wanted for anything. We were surrounded by tons of friends. Summers were spent at the country club pool, so parties every weekend that I would go to with my parents. I mean, we had a really good time. And then my dad went to prison when I was in the 5th grade. For embezzlement, and we lost everything, including our status. So we went from living in this huge house with these fancy cars to living on the other side of the tracks in a tiny duplex while my dad spent his time in prison. And I was only a 5th grader when that happened. So I was intuitive, adolescent, had a lot of questions roaming around in my head already. And then, I felt like the person I trusted the most failed me completely. And then I was afraid. What does the future hold for me? What does the future hold for our family? All of those things. So he came back from prison, did okay for a while. And then the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, he took his own life. And it was, I don't even have a word to describe what happened with me in that moment, but the God that I thought I knew, because I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, the God I thought I knew just, I was like, well, never mind. I don't believe you. And I don't think that you were good for me. So I just took a hard left. I started using drugs and alcohol to kind of numb the pain that I was going through. I graduated from high school with honors. I was on the dance line, secretary of the Kiwanettes Club. I did all the things because I was in full blown performance mode. I had to show everybody that I was okay. But on the inside, I was truly dying. And what started as, just a fun way for me to kind of check out of life turned into something that became my lifestyle. Nobody wakes up one day and says, hey, I'm going to be a full-blown addict. I'm going to live on the streets. I'm going to ruin every relationship that I have. I'm going to steal from my family. I'm going to become homeless. Nobody says that. That's not anyone's desire, but that is exactly what happened to me. It is a very slow fade into oblivion. And, it took me to places that I didn't belong and, kept me longer than I wanted to stay and cost me way more than I wanted to pay.
How long was your life impacted by addiction, homelessness, those things?
Well, addiction really started at the age of 15. I mean, again, it's a slow fade, but it lasted, well over more than half of my adult life.
Wow.
So I've been kind of pivoting now for 10 years. That pivot has had its own roadblocks, had its own, its own relapses. All of those things have happened in these last 10 years, but I've still been on the upswing for a solid 10 years now. So I'm 43. I'm going to go ahead and tell you my age. So you're looking at—
You look amazing.
Thank you. It's been, 20 some odd years that I've been walking this out, and probably, 18 of that I was in full blown addiction mode. I lost custody of my kids, lost 2 marriages, traveled around, went back and forth through anonymous rooms and rehabs and detox centers. I was always looking for purpose, always looking for destiny, always looking for identity. And I just truly didn't know who I was. I knew that the person walking the streets homeless was not who I was destined to be, but I didn't know how to move out of that position. It was terrifying. The thought of moving from, this is all I know, to now I have to work so hard to get to this new place, and I don't know if I can do it. So let's just get high so I don't have to think about it. Wow. So it's just a dangerous downward spiral that I think a lot of people get into. I do a lot of work with the homeless. I have such a heart and compassion for them because I get their plight and I understand where they are, and nobody wants to be there, but you get into a place where you've been there so long, you don't know how to get out. And the thought of getting out is more terrifying than the thought of just staying. So
yeah, that's such a good point, because I talk about that. I talk about it in my book. I talk about it here on the podcast, that the fear of getting out of a miserable place, that's the thing fear does. It's so insidious and it's such a liar. And as miserable as I was in my own story, in my own life, somehow the thought of exposing my true self, my fears to the world seemed just bigger than living in that miserable place. So what was the pivot point for you? What was that moment? I talk often about how at some point and through different catalysts in my life, the pain of being in the bondage to fear became more than the fear and the concern I had about exposing my fears to the world. What was that pivot point for you that actually and you said it was a slow pivot for 10 years, but is there like a precipitating event that really just moved you out of where you were and started you on a different path?
Yeah. So the biggest pivot point, there's been several. I mean, one even as recent as this summer, but the biggest pivot point for me was when I actually found myself dying from an overdose in the middle of the street, in the middle of the hood, in the middle of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I had ingested a lot of drugs, and I had been up for days on end, and my body finally gave up. It gave up. And I knew what was happening to me because I'd been close to death so many times. And I found myself taking my last breath in the middle of this street in Mississippi. And I remember thinking, wow, I knew that this would happen to me. Like, this is the lie I've been listening to forever, that I wouldn't even reach my 40th birthday. And here I am dying in the middle of the street, and this is exactly what I deserve. That's how I was feeling. That's what I was thinking to myself as I couldn't catch a breath. My heartbeat was slowing down. I could hear my heartbeat slowing down in my ears. And I knew that my life was over. And I just had to come to terms with it. Like, this is the end for me. And the next thing I knew, I was walking down the street again. And I honestly thought like that I was having an out of body experience, and that if I were to turn around, I was going to see my lifeless self lying in the middle of the road. And so I just concluded that, okay, well, if there is a hell, then this is it. And this is going to be my eternity. Like, I'm going to have to live out this life for the rest of my eternity. And I was terrified, and through a crazy set of circumstances and events that transpired over the next literal 24 hours, I ended up coming to the realization that I was not dead, because I said, look, if the sun sets, then that means I'm still on the earth, and the earth is still turning under me, and I'm still here. So I watched the sun travel across the sky all day, and then it set, and I was like, okay, I'm not dead. So, I just started having to make decisions like, do I want to die or do I want to live? Like, because this is a wake up call for me. Like, I am alive. I don't know what happened. I don't know how I stood up off of that ground. I don't know any of it. I don't know what to do or where to go. But through a serious, crazy set of circumstantial changes, I found myself the very next day walking across the threshold of a recovery center where the people truly loved me back to life. And I fought them tooth and nail, because again, I was afraid of change. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid that if I change and I become a better person, then I'm gonna fail at that too. And so I was listening to so many lies in my head that I needed to decide. And so every day I just woke up and said, okay, I still am breathing. I still have breath in my lungs. That means I must still have purpose. I must still have something that I'm supposed to do on this earth. And I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to keep striving for that. And that was the biggest pivot point. I mean, I guess when you're knocking on death's door, that's a big enough one.
Yeah,
But
I would say so.
there's been several pivot points across this journey over the past 10 years, I mean, the one this summer, I climbed the highest mountain of the Rocky Mountain Range, Mount Elbert in Colorado. And I'm deathly afraid of heights, or I used to say that over myself all the time. But I overcame that fear. Like, I forced myself up that mountain. It was the hardest journey I've ever taken. It was 12 hours straight uphill, 4,000 feet elevation gain up to 14,400 feet. And I made it, I made it to the top. And I remember my husband kept saying, you need to turn around and look at this view. I was like, dude, you do not want me turning around, because if I do, I'm going to be stuck like Chuck on the side of this mountain. And then they're going to have to come get the helicopter to get me down. Like, let me just get to the top, and then I'll figure out the rest later. I just need to get there.
Oh my gosh, that's so
That
great.
was the pivot too. It was overcoming something that I thought was never going to allow me to do amazing things, but climbing a mountain, the biggest mountain in the Rockies. Like, who gets to do that, and who gets to say that they did that?
Yeah. I've heard your story before. I think the first time I heard it, we weren't such good friends, and it really impacted me. I'm finding it's interesting now that we are just such close friends. Hearing that story again is emotional for me. Like, if God had not rescued you out of that gutter, that would have impacted my life. That would have impacted the thousands of people who your story has touched the lives. Man, I mean, it is such a reminder that fear wants to destroy us. Like, the mission of fear is to kill, steal, and destroy. And through your story, you highlighted a lot of lies that fear was telling you. Can you share with us now, what are some of the lies of fear that you believed then, that now, looking back from this position of being fearless in many areas of your life, what were those specific lies that fear was telling you to keep you living that small life, to keep you in bondage to fear? What were some of those lies?
There's so many, I can't hardly even count them. I'm telling you that I was lied to by me every day. I was a horrible person. that I could never make it on my own, that I would never have a godly marriage, that I would never be a good wife, that I had no value as a human being.
Wow.
That my life was meaningless, that I would always be poor, I would never be successful, I would never amount to anything, that I would die before the age of 40, that I was worthless. And here's the kicker, that I would never be normal. Like, I now always asked, what is normal anyway? Like, what is that? But when you look at society and the boxes that society tries to put us in, then I wanted to fit and I didn't. All these things, like, again, once you're there and you're in depravity, the thought of like getting out, taking the steps necessary sound incredibly daunting. To me, saying, okay, well, in order to get off the street, I'm number one, going to have to put the drugs down. Number two, I'm going to have to go find a job, but who's going to hire me? Like, number three, I'm going to have to, all these different, find a bus route, get on a bus. Like, just the thought of trying to move out of my current position, like, it all sounds simple, but when you're in that, it is it's like climbing a mountain. Just taking one step is like climbing an entire mountain when you are in that kind of realm and you're listening to all these lies every single day. Guilt, shame, and remorse that were holding me hostage.
Wow.
And I operated out of those three things: guilt, shame, and remorse. The more guilt I felt about who I was as a person and how I had treated the people that I loved the most, then that would just send me right back. And then once I'm back and I'm using drugs again, then I was full of shame. Like, I can't believe I'm here again. How did I end up here again? So it's just a constant round table of fear, shame, remorse. Guilt, shame,
Wow.
remorse, fear.
Well, it's so interesting because when you talk about the fears, I noticed every single lie of fear started with I am. And we talk about that a lot, that fear lies to us in first person. So fear is external. It comes and it begins to speak to you. And I think that's what happened when everything happened with your dad, is that fear took the opportunity of this tragic event to come and begin to speak to you. And then if we listen, if we don't have the tools, if we don't understand fearlessness and we don't understand what our power is, and without the tools, without the language to ask for help, I think we begin to listen to the lies of fear, the lies that fear tells us are in first person. I'm this, I'm that, I'm not this, I'm not that. And then we begin to parrot those things. And you referenced that as well. Then I told myself these lies every day. So we adopt the language of fear as our own. And once we do that, it's kind of game over, and unless you can get some tools and get some help. And I just think it's so interesting. Your story is just so fascinating and inspirational because you were deep in it. And man, the other thing you highlighted, it's like your story highlights all the secrets of fearlessness, because the other thing is that fear loves to live in the dark corners and it's ambiguous. What is the lie of I'll never be normal? What does that even mean? Like you said, you didn't even know really what that meant. That's how fear operates. Um, so when you went then and finally went through that amazing program, what was it? Or I'm sure there were a million things, but can you share with us a couple of things that you learned in that program to expose the lies that fear was telling you, or to combat those lies? Where did fearlessness begin to kind of get a foothold in your life?
Well, things that I've learned over not just there, but in life, once I brought myself back to the land of the living, truly, then a lot of things have changed and a lot of new revelations have come about. One being like that I am lovable, that I am worthy, that I am worth it, that I can be successful. I'm proving that to myself every day. I am a good wife, that, one day I'll have the opportunity to be a good mother, but for now, I'm a good mother to a lot of children that I mentor. And so there's just a lot of different things, but I think the main thing that happened was I started to find out who I was and that I had purpose and destiny. Now, the big piece of my identity wasn't revealed to me until recently, actually. And so I've just been kind of walking out and slaying giants of fear all along the way. and just trying to overcome different scenarios that could pop up against me and try to lie to me again and tell me that I wasn't worth it. And, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I went through many years of counseling and just trying to overcome some of these identity pieces. But the true part of my identity was revealed recently. And I think that was the number one kicker in my life that really sent me on a completely new journey into a realm of existence for me that I didn't even know was possible. And so finding out who I was probably, and speaking it every day, that was the thing. It uncovered my purpose and who I was in the world and what I was supposed to do to help others.
That's so amazing. Yes. One of the core tenets of fearlessness is that you have both the power, the privilege, and the responsibility, I believe, of rediscovering your true identity. I believe that we're sort of born with the fullness of who we are, and that the human experience is going on this treasure hunt of discovering who we were created to be. And I use the term rediscover because if anybody's like me, their true identity got buried under years and years of crap. And that crap is, the opinions of others, the lies of fear, the lies that we tell ourselves, the lies that society tells us, and the constant obsession we have with trying to fit in instead of trying to stand out. So I just love your story. You are such a picture of walking in fearlessness, of being and becoming a fearless leader. And I think your story in particular is so powerful because there's such a distinction between who you were born, the world in which you were born, and then what happened and what your life became, and then the redemption of coming out of that, and that the big thing was really about discovering your own true identity so that you could begin to walk out that big destiny that was put inside of you at the time that you were born. So, my friend, what a pleasure to talk to you, to interview you. Is there anything that you want to share before we wrap this up?
The only thing that I would like to share with people is that it is possible. Even when you feel like it's impossible, you're living with anxiety, maybe you're just bound by fear and you don't know how to get out. I'm here to tell you that there is a better way, an easier, softer way on the other side of it. It's just we have to be willing to submit to not believing it anymore and saying enough is enough. Because today I'm not afraid of what's happening in the world around me. I feel like 2020 was my best year yet because I spoke it into existence. I started speaking into 2020.
Yes.
As soon as all this stuff started happening, I was like, no, this is not going to come near me. It's not going to affect me. And I'm going to just continue to be successful regardless of what's happening around me. I don't fear the politics. I don't fear any of the things that are happening because I know who I am. I know what my purpose is and I know what I'm supposed to do in this world, even if it was to end tomorrow. Did I do what I was supposed to do? Yes, I'm doing it. I'm more confident today than I've ever been. And I'm taking risks and facing those fears and slaying those giants every single day. I do it with the help of people like you. And I'm so grateful for that. I feel like what you're doing for this community and for all of the people who are listening is just incredibly priceless. And so I just want to give you kudos and honor and so grateful for all that you're doing and all of the content that you're putting out there for people like me. I wish I would have had your stuff 10, 15 years ago. It probably would have changed the trajectory that I was on if I knew that I wasn't alone, because I felt so alone. And I just want all of the listeners to know you are not alone, that we've all struggled in some shape, form, or fashion. It may not have been as detrimental as my story was, but we all have an ability and desire to get free of that, and it can happen.
Again, thank you so much. Victory Vision Publishing has published my book. My book is now available on Amazon, both in paperback and ebook Kindle form. Julie, how can people contact you, find out more about using your publishing services?
Sure, they can go to victoryvision.org. That is my website. Of course, my life is an open book, so I'm available on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter under my name, and then as well as at Victory Vision Publishing on all those channels as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm truly accessible at this point. People can get in touch with me very easily, so please go visit those places and let's chat.
Fantastic. Thanks again so much for being here. And thank you to everybody in our audience for tuning in today. We just appreciate you. And I hope that you got some value out of hearing Julie speak, out of hearing her story of overcoming fear. And we hope that you join us next time on The Fearless Revolution.
The Fearless Revolution has begun, and you are an important part of getting the message of fearlessness out to the world. Follow Sandy on Facebook and Instagram at The Fearless Revolution for more empowering content that will help leaders embrace the fullness of their identities, lean into their destinies, and lead fearlessly. Check out the show notes for all the links. If this podcast has impacted you, we ask that you subscribe or follow, and be sure to share with another fearless leader.